acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you. Item 1 is apologies, councillors. We do have an apology. Councillor O'Hara has an apology for this meeting. Number 2, any acknowledgements, councillors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just acknowledge the long-time resident of Tintinara who just turned 100 on the 3rd. She was a long-time occupant of one of our homes down there, Lindy, Northcott. Unfortunately now is in the home down at Keith, but still bright as a button, and it was a pleasure for everybody to catch up with her. Thank you.
Very good, very good. I'm just writing that down. Lindy Northcott. 100 years.
Yep.
Okay, there's no others?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering whether it's appropriate that you send her
Something, yes.
a card or a letter from council acknowledging her in the district.
Yes, that's
At 100.
yes, certainly. Thank you. There's no others. I move on to declarations of conflict of interest. Is there any councillors that you wish to advise? There's none. Number 4, confirmation of minutes of the meeting held on 16th of July. I move that way. Councillor Corwin is the mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arthur. Is there any discussion? Being none, put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 5 is adjourned business, of which we have none. Number 6, 6.1, the Mayor's report is there, councillors. Any questions? So it does pick up the entire time we're in Canberra. Yes, Councillor Rowntree.
Thank you, Mayor. The meetings on July 2nd to the 4th, there was a whole stack of them. Is there any update you can give us on any of those meetings that would be relevant for us at the moment?
In relation to the 3rd with Louise Miller-Frost, that was a group of Murraylands and Riverlands CEOs and mayors to probably bolster the case, among others, around a freight bypass of Adelaide, in effect, through what is mostly the Mid-Murray area. We're just following up on that, and the DIT public relations process around what's likely to be offered is said to be forthcoming this month, but I've noticed that we're running out of this month and we haven't been notified of anything yet. We did meet with one of the advisors to the Dr. Anne Ailey about early childhood education. There was quite a bit in the news only today. I heard about the childcare deserts, yet I don't think the federal policies that I've seen, and I suppose we would have informed her of that, are really doing anything within childcare deserts at this stage. The CEO might want to add to that.
Just through you, Mayor, today we also got a letter from the CEO of Education noting that there is some funding to be put available to rural and regional South Australia in terms of childcare. We're not too sure what that is yet, but it was just basically a heads up that might be coming. So we're keeping an eye on that as well.
And a courtesy discussion with Senator Karen Grogan, who is, I suppose, keen to be involved and meet with us, showing a high interest, particularly in environment, of course, around the Coorong, but we feel that she's a valuable way into the federal government as a senator for South Australia. That would be the ones that I would think were of interest.
Through Mayor, the meeting on the 18th of July, we did a media interview. Have you had any response to your interview with the Murray Valley Standard regarding Country Health Connect?
No, I haven't. But we're just working on that process again. I have had a discussion with Councillor Peach, and we'll be, obviously we've sent the letter about this, at the last minute. I think I just saw it. The point would be, it appears, Councillor Peach, you may add in a second, that we're being treated more harshly, shall we say, than other regions of the state on this subject. So we're probably building our case. So you can, yes, Jonathan, please.
So last week I was on the Eyre Peninsula at the field days, and I had the opportunity to talk to the local health network people over there. And I put to them, asked them if they had a town air management group that would be similar to the situation we had at Tintinara and Canalpin, with no other health service but them being there. And they do. It's the town of Lock. About 250, 260 people. The local health centre there is staffed 5 days a week with 2 different nurses. They actively work with the South Australian Ambulance Service to triage anything that comes in to them. And they, just talking to the representatives there, it sounded exactly like our service used to run. A couple of great local people, well supported. They were horrified that that would be seen to be outside of the scope of what they should be doing. So I think it's a good news story for us to use in terms of prosecuting our case, that it can still be done, but also conscious that we don't want to throw the people of Lock under the bus at the same time in using them as an example. I think, but it's a good a picture of another LHN doing exactly what we should have happening.
So my question is there, are they also under some form of Country Connect, or are they associated with another health environment?
No, I believe it was exactly the same as we were at
Country Connect.
Country Health Connect. And the staff from the LHN that rotated through across the 3 days were all familiar with that service and how it was operating. And it was seen as quite unique in their region. There wasn't really anything else like it, but it worked for that site with no other medical access.
Which different CEOs?
And I'd regard Lock as a very good mirror image of what we are in that scenario. I think we also just need to see how Lucendale, what Lucendale gets, for want of a better way of wording it.
Have another question?
Yeah.
Oh, really, the last show I wanted to ask about was the meeting that you had on the 22nd of July with the Honourable Nick Champion, Minister for Planning and Housing. Was there anything from that? And the 30th of July with Tom Koutsannis.
Yeah, so Minister Nick Champion is now the Minister for SA Water as well. And that was our principal reason for getting a meeting with him, just to reinforce our process around East Wellington effect. He was fully aware of it. I think it's be fair to say that other members of Cabinet are aware of it now too. Finally, meeting with Minister Koutsannis around various sort of highway projects. The Mallee Highway project will go ahead as described. We can't appear to, Josh, vary anything too much with that. This is in relation to, it's funded as a safety upgrade as much as anything, to bring it up to a better level of safety rating. That was probably, and we just talked about the Dukes Highway and the passing lanes and the bypass of Adelaide and several other things in general, and the growth strategy as well. And what I would say is both those two ministers of state parliament, I say senior ministers, I might add, is they asked about what are we doing as council around employment land and growth.
What's employment land?
Classification, a planning classification. That was their, quite just out of the blue, both of them put that to us.
Yeah, it's light industry.
Light industry.
So that was more interesting in a general sense, and I suppose. But at least we had a meeting with the minister.
Did we have an answer when he asked that question? Did we have a good answer?
Well, we have got some land zone now, and it's interesting to see out in the near what was the Big Olive that there's some movement on land sales on that now. We're open for business, but you know, I think their question was interesting. It was an unsolicited question. It just come out as.
It's acknowledged.
Can I
Yeah,
add something
certainly
to this? To the chair, I think one of the things that's happening is so strategic employment lands are industrial lands, I should say it's light and heavy. A lot of those, the expansion of northern Adelaide has reached its limit in terms of both residential and industrial land. So yes, you've got Concordia and you've got some Riverlea and the like. But I think state governments sees there is, as I said, a limit to how much Northern Adelaide can provide. So naturally, I think they're starting to look to other places, and naturally, I think you start looking towards Murray Bridge and Tailem Bend. We do have a growth strategy. During the growth strategy, November, December, and that plan for Tailem Bend, that'll be residential and commercial industrial. Land supply, land needs, looking out to next 2020. Timing is excellent.
That's good. That's really good.
Anything else? Sorry, councillors.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, in terms of your meeting with Tom Coates and Tonus, did you get much joy in terms of some of the issues faced on the Dukes Highway conversation?
I got not an absolute commitment, but I believe he understood our position. And rather than go directly into the press, I'd rather let them, there's some senior departmental people in the room as well, address what we see as the risks of the community on that highway. I'd like to see perhaps in the next 3 months where we end up with that before I would go back in a more combative sense, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
One thing is extremely obvious. It's no secret in this state that the department hasn't got any money. That would probably be my polite way of, the response to everything just about, but that's why the spending on the Mallee Highway is coming out of a different pool of money, which is 50-50 federal state. But even the criteria around that now is stricter and stricter, and that's why we probably can't get perhaps what we would have liked, the right nuance for our district out of that, unfortunately. No more questions. Councillor Arthur, you want to add to yours? Oh, sorry, just before that, Councillor. Manager of Roads and Infrastructure, Josh, could you introduce your guest that's just arrived in the back of the room? And I was thinking it was a very inquisitive member of the public, but.
Hi, so Conrad Horn is from a company called Field Force 4, and then he's helping us with a review of field services operations. So we're getting Conrad to help delve into what our service levels are, what our staff are doing, and identifying. And one of the outcomes will be that we'll have an annual plan and some opportunities where we might be over servicing in some areas. We might need to improve services and others. So Conrad's here interviewing staff and asking questions, and we've provided a heap of background data that will help inform this plan. So he's just here observing.
Welcome, Conrad. Okay, sorry, Councillor Arthur. Anything you wish to add to?
I think just the only thing is there's probably know about the trouble over in Victoria with the wild dogs being declared a native animal, so you can't shoot them, and it's creating quite a ruckus up there because there's been quite a few sheep attacks. One fella's been taken to court because he shot the dog and
in Victoria,
found guilty. Yes. And they've already seen an infiltration of dogs into our area, and the ratings program is just about to start. So it's one we've really got to keep an eye on, I think.
so if the Victorian dog comes to South Australia, you may take the bait. Is that
They stop at the border.
You don't come.
They stop at the border. The Victorian dogs, they know they'll get shot over here, so they stop, turn back. And
depends who they barrack for.
but they were, Victorian government did offer 15 million to build a fence or something, but I think it's about 190 million they said would need to be done around Little Desert.
Have we got any reports
Yeah, that's right.
in our district of any attacks yet, given we had a few wild dogs here a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing else? We'll move on. Councillor Coleman, you've got an extensive report. Anything to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, pretty well as it's written. I and the CEO had quite a good tour or so to speak, of the conference at Tamworth. And as I was mentioning, there was a bit of a lot of speakers and from both sides of politics and with their own view how we can do better with water management. And there's a few examples in there of the growth that's happening is quite significant over there. And one thing they demonstrated, they're trying to maintain or, save on their resource of water. And that was interesting on the tours. And also on our MDA AGM, there was a couple of recommendations put through to the various authorities regarding, one was the Lake Albert to the North Lagoon Coorong connector, and the other one was the south to north lagoons of the Coorong at Punker Point, where it's quite narrow, to help replenish the South Lagoon. So I thought that's interesting. So hopefully it comes into effect with the relevant authorities.
So the conference endorsed that they should be
Yes, correct.
enacted.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, let's start. Yeah,
Well, it was a
certainly.
very interesting report, so I thank you for writing that up. And I thought the part about 3 million chickens a week being processed was staggering,
Mm.
but I thought your summary was really good, so thank you.
Yes, yes, staggering.
Righto. Number 7, petitions, I have none. Number 8, deputations, I have nil. Number 9, since you're not going to ask, Conrad's not going to ask any questions. Public question time, I appear to have nil. So 10.1, ordinary council meeting commencement times. Council
I'll move
decision report.
I'll move option 1.
The councillor moving option 1. There's a seconder.
Question.
I'd like a seconder. Councillor Coleman, you are the seconder?
Yes, that's correct.
May I allow you a question? Sorry, councillor. Yeah.
And I'm aware at the moment that post-COVID, we're not allowed to use Zoom for ordinary meeting. Is there any movement across local government to allow that? Should there be?
Through you, Mayor, it was an emergency provision, and once those emergency provisions stopped, and there has been no movement that is visible. If there was anything happening behind the scenes, we're unaware of them, but I'm pretty certain there isn't.
Your second question is, should there be?
My second question is, maybe we should be leaders in having a look at that, particularly for distances over a certain kilometrage, allowing that. I'm not saying carte blanche for everybody, because I think face-to-face is better, but where possible and people can't make it, when we're talking over 100 kilometres or whatever that may look like, we should be leaders, I think, in having a look at rural South Australia.
Appears to be no appetite within the LGA to review the how do I describe the way we had during that period.
Awful, but
To my knowledge, there's been no survey done. I'm looking at the governance officer. May I add something, Ashley?
You might recall earlier in the year that there was a review done by the state government it was basically the end of the last election process. That also included some changes to the Act, and I believe we put some feedback back to them about
That's right.
the electronic meetings. I don't believe anything else has come out of that so far, though.
And just through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I'm just wondering then whether there's any appetite for this council to consider that as a part of the motion.
We probably should just follow it up first within the LGA process and report back. I'm just trying to, we are in an interesting time where you'll get to vote very soon on a new LGA president for the next 2 years. That will come up probably next month, I think. One of the things that concerns me was the difficulty in running ordinary council meetings during COVID when majority of people were on Zoom. And it was as much the difficulty of myself being confident that the confidential provisions when we went to conference were being abided by. And I had some severe doubts at some stages that they were. And I don't know how we resolve that within the ordinary monthly meeting process, because that's usually when confidential things are dealt with. But it's worth us pursuing more so at a committee level, I think, as we get more phone towers online. As it was pointed out to me, I think Narang is actually working.
I'm led to believe.
I'm led to believe, and we will get the power hooked onto whatever they have to do at Coalbase, that'll happen too, fairly soon. But I don't know if I've answered your question, but to me, there hasn't been a wholesome review of the challenges of abiding by the Act, which they never really released mayors from certain parts of abiding by the Act within the Zoom context. And probably, I think that's the saddest part, I think. No one's actually reflected on how hard it was. Councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. I've given this a fair bit of thought and I've spoken to a few people.
You're speaking for or against the motion.
I'm actually going to speak against the motion. When this group of elected members took up this role, it was with a 5 o'clock time slot. I believe we had a meeting, one of our first meetings was to look at times for our future meetings and we all agreed 5 o'clock. If going forward, we want to attract younger people into the chamber who may have full-time jobs, then it is going to be trickier when they do start earlier. I'm someone that does live a long way away and I guess I'm not too fussed either way, whether we started at 3 or started at 5. I don't live quite as far as Councillor Arthur and Councillor Peach, but you know, fair distance. So I think my view would be that I'm probably going to vote against this and leave it where it is at this point until perhaps the next term of council. That's my view.
Okay, Councillor Maidment.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, just a question, if option 1 is voted in, can we do a probationary period of 6 months?
If you want to put an amendment or the mover and the seconder, we're happy
If the
to.
mood of the room is to go that way, I'm happy to move that way.
Well, you seek amendment of the mover and the seconder. So what would you be proposing for a period of how many months?
6.
6? Looking at the mover and seconder.
Yep.
Mover and seconder agree to a variation
Mhm.
of commence at 3 for a trial period of 6 months. Is that the right words, Ashley?
That all right?
You want to speak further to it, Councillor Maidment?
I just think it's worth giving it a chance, and if it doesn't work out, we could reassess after the 6 months,
Okay.
given that it's nearly daylight saving time too, and there will be more daylight hours for councillors to get home in the daylight, even with a 3 o'clock or perhaps even with a 5 o'clock start, but with 3 o'clock definitely.
Yep.
Because that's the big worry for me with this, is that councillors and staff have to travel home when it's dark.
Okay. I'm in a for and against debate. Councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to speak against the motion. I think the 5 o'clock meeting start, and noting that at our first meeting, I tried to change it to 5:30. I think the 5 o'clock meeting start is helpful for those of us working in full-time employment or in terms of being able to manage a day to both keep things rolling and be here and present in time to deal with council business properly. I would note that changing it to 3 o'clock will then knock our workshops earlier into the day. And for me, that looking at it, if we had workshops starting at 10, I'd need to leave home at 8:30 as the furthest councillor from the chamber, and that would write the day off completely. Whereas at the moment, most council meeting days, I can still do half a day of work before heading up to attend workshops and then the meeting. I do sympathise with the argument of getting home a bit earlier and safer for both staff and other councillors. Personally, it's not something that bothers me. I would much rather be able to allot that time in the evening to a meeting and travel home afterwards, about an hour and 20 minutes for me to get there. I think public engagement wise, and I do note that we haven't had a lot of people coming in this chamber to talk to us. But I do think having a later meeting start does allow those that are working to sneak in afterwards to ask a question or put forward a petition. So I will definitely be voting against the motion.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking for or against it? I'm taking councillor Mayne, but you actually spoke for it since it was your variation.
Hmm.
I'm looking at the mover and seconder if they wish to speak.
Yeah, I'll just.
You'll close.
I'll close the vote. won't I?
Just, I'm just looking at the seconder. We never gave him an opportunity. Councillor Qualman, do you want to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, just for council after closes. And I'm listening to the good points being raised in the chamber. And yeah, so it's 5 o'clock, yeah, it's got its good points, and at 3 o'clock it has its too, but I'm just worried about the WHS side of things and this time of the year with some of the not only elected members, but members of the staff and having to travel, you know, after a meeting. So that's, and council made a good suggestion that we just do it for 6 months. So trial it for 6 months. Thank you.
Okay, anyone? I'm looking at councillor Bland hasn't spoken. That's it.
Well, I've been here when it's been in the afternoon, in the evening, and, you know, we can all have, and having had a working life during some of that. And it definitely is difficult. There is no doubt about that. I understand all the WH&S staff costs, etc., that come in with it. I think right at this minute, I'm probably in favour of having a trial. I don't believe people have come into the chamber except a few years ago when there were some issues, and they appear not to be a problem at the moment. Should that happen and people are up in arms, and we can relook at it earlier if needed. And my sympathies go to Councillor Peach, because if this gets up, because I totally understand a young family life.
Thank you. Councillor Arthur, you'll close.
I'd just like to say that a lot of meetings nowadays with big companies, they start in the morning and go through and finish about 3 o'clock. The other thing is, the later you go, the more tired you get. You know, look back at in the meeting, last one in July, we started at 11:45 with workshops. We went till 5 o'clock, and then with the meeting from 5 till 7:30. As the day gets older, you do tend to get tired, and then people have got to get in the car and drive home. So that's one of the reasons, and I'll be voting for it, of course. Thank you.
Okay, councillors. I think I'm going to close. That debate is closed. So the motion you'll be voting on is that ordinary council meetings held at the Coorong Civic Centre chambers on Railway Terrace here at Tailem Bend commence at 3 o'clock for a trial period of 6 months. All those in favour? Those against? So that's carried. So councillors Qualman, Arthur, Maidman and Bland voted for the motion, and councillors Rountree and Peach voted against the motion. Thank you, councillors, for that. Number 10.2, I would hope. Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Phase 4. Councillors, just
I'd like to move that way, Mr Mayor.
move that way. Arthur moves. The recommendation as it reads, is there a seconder? Councillor Bland was the first. The hand up amongst many. Just note, councillors, this will be the last of this money that we allocate. This program will expire eventually, and the federal government has indicated they won't be bringing it back in. As some of you be aware, we have several photo opportunities. I've asked some of you to take part in them around the district in relation to our sporting clubs. You need to ask someone to be in a photo op with a politician if required around this. It would be fair to say that local government across Australia really did like this program. And we would have, one of the things we would have said in Canberra is that this program was very valuable in improving society.
I'll just speak on.
You can speak on it, councillor, because you've
I
led it
just-
so far. Yes.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the staff for the workshops we've had where all the information has been put together in a very concise manner so that we can actually sit down, make a decision at this meeting. And I think it was a easy decision to make with all the information on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peach.
I have a question, Mr Mayor, as I wasn't able to be there for that workshop.
Right.
The project Tail and Bend car park, am I reading this correctly that that $100,000 is just for the design work? Or is there actual work in that as well?
Director, and he might better answer. So there was already 200,000, councillor, in our budget. And this is in addition to that,
So it's for construction as well.
Right.
into what some people call Lake Bungee in.
Oh, that's great. Just the description didn't read it as construction. It was just design.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Councillor Qualman, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so going on from further that, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just have to ask the questions because it shows there stormwater infrastructure upgrade. So we will be doing with the issue of the pooling down at the southern end of the Northern Car Park. And also I'm glad to see that addressing the exit points or we'll have caravans have been having a few problems. So,
Yeah.
so that'll be all dealt with and allowing for and tree roots that we're going to get around them. Yep. Thank you.
So councillor, yes, the streetscape did show some different parking and delineations and particularly the entrance, and this funding will allow a better consideration of all that to be done properly. Beautiful in this process. But all right. Quiet today. Is there any further debate? There is. Mover and seconder. You're the seconder, councillor Bland. That's why I think I'm looking at you.
No, I'm fine,
Fine.
thank you.
There is no further debate. Councillor Arthur, you're closed.
Close.
So the motion is, as is the recommendation in the agendas, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number three. Number three, go. Long-term financial plan out to the 10 years to 2033, 34. The recommendation there, Councillor Peach has a question.
Are there any amendments to the LTFP since the Finance Committee looked at it? This is as presented to the Finance Committee. Thank you.
This has also been to audit and risk, is that, councillor? Last week. Councillor Roundtree,
I was happy to move.
thank you. You moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Peach, you're the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it?
And no, I think it's all very self-explanatory and we've been over this quite a lot of times now.
Thank you. Anyone else, seconder, wants to speak? Councillor Qualman?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, as Councillor Peach mentioned, it's gone through Finance Committee and the Audit Committee, so and elected members, so it's been rejigged several times or a couple of times or 3 times. So yeah, it's probably ready to be adopted. Looks good.
And you're on both committees, councillor. Well, you've probably seen it. Anyone else?
I think clear to say, Mr Mayor, that the audit committee were not unhappy. In fact, we're reasonably quite pleased with the changes from previous drafts. So.
And it'd be pertinent to, I suppose, say that we're in the midst of our process of lodging everything for the ESCOSA review at the moment. Looking at the director, he's looking somewhat relieved.
Should the LTFB be passed in a minute or two? Will be sent off to ESCOSA tomorrow.
No pressure. Councillors, Councillor Roundtree will close.
Close.
Thank you. So I put the motion as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried, but Councillor Arthur voted against it still. So it's still carried. Number 4. Number 4. So there's a recommendation, councillors, ESCOSA advice scheme update. Want to move that way, please?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I know we had a number given to us of what it would cost to have this SCOSA done. Did that cost include all the time and labour of staff? No, so that's on top of that original amount. Do you have an idea of what it's cost council in time to do this?
We haven't done those figures. It's part of our day-to-day job. We could come back to you with, the process is not yet finished, so.
And I'm not going to require more work. I just wondered whether you'd had an idea of what it might have cost.
Through the chair, a lot of the work that we do for SCOSA is work that we do regardless for our
Okay.
auditors. It'd probably actually be a little bit difficult to calculate.
Yeah, no, don't go to any effort. That's not important.
Another piece of work we have to do. Anything else, councillors? Councillor Arthur, you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask, the cost of this, has that actually been worked out where it was going to be the same amount for small councils as large
Yes.
councils? That has been
Position
changed
of
or not?
hasn't changed of the government and the regulator or the previous, I would say the previous minister actually, if I was fair, is that no, they want to see the full 4-year cycle.
It's a fair whack on their budgets, isn't it?
Well, yes, but think of the councils with only 1,000 people,
Yeah.
same process. So that's then the position of SCOSA and the minister, the previous minister up to now.
Thank you.
I still haven't got a mover. And councillor Roundtree is the mover. For a seconder. Councillor Foreman, thank you. Is there anyone wishing further debate around this? There is none. You'll close. I'll put the motion and it is as the recommendation, councillors. All those in favour? Is against, that's carried unanimously. Number 6. Section 5, you did right, 5. There's a section 270 annual review. There it is. There's a recommendation that the report regarding the annual review of requests made under section 270 of the Act be received. Which we had none, councillors, just for everyone's benefit, but councillor Roundtree. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Maidment, I'm taking. Any discussion around that? We had none, so it's hard to discuss. There's none. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Number 6, Coorong Asset Management Update and Work Plan. There's a recommendation we receive and note the report, councillors. Someone move that way. Councillor Qualman and councillor Bland. Any discussion, councillors?
I'll just ask a question. There's funding in the budget for $182,000. What will that mainly be used for?
Yep, through the chair. Combination of software licenses and the physical condition audit for the asset class. For this year, it'll be buildings and structures. Development of the funding model, renewal funding model, and development of the AMP.
So this is on top of the $100,000 our ATs. IT is going to cost us every year.
Yeah.
Different things.
Different to
Completely
the IT.
Different to the
Yeah.
IT.
Oh,
There is a small component is for our software license for the asset management software, but the rest of it is actual work being undertaken on the asset management plans, condition audits, and modelling.
thank you.
Councillor Maidment.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, could somebody explain to me what the GIS is and does it consist of aerial photos or of the geographic systems? Could you just reiterate on that for me?
Yep. So through the chair, so you've got the asset management system, which is your database that houses all your assets, and then the GIS is the spatial aerial photography that has those assets on there. So
Okay,
GIS will be used as part of the Patrol Grader app that we'll look to implement.
Yep.
Allows us to visually and spatially show those assets.
sure. Thank you.
Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the other page where we got the asset classes, the table there and buildings, community facilities, water and drainage and plant and fleet, I haven't been ticked off. We've got some sort of time frame when they'll be ticked off as in the road and transport, please.
It's the green ones, councillors, when the sort of phantom tick is the green. It's when they will be ticked off in as
Oh, all
required.
right. Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. We're just about caught up.
Could I
Councillor
just-
Arthur,
Could I just have a follow-up question regarding that funding? So this is a once only charge, or once we've got these systems up and going, that will then become a cost against our IT network of X amount of dollars?
not an IT issue, it's a,
IT?
no, it's not an IT process, it's a,
No, so there's an annual fee, license fee for the software, which makes up a small portion of that figure, and then the remaining money is used to do the condition audits, redo the valuations, modelling, and the asset management plan update. So next year it'll be water and drainage, and so there'll be a similar asking for a similar amount of money so that we can undertake condition audits and do the same thing we're doing this year for the next asset class, and then we'll move through that schedule.
Okay.
as was required by the uniform presentation of finances and various other parts. Anyone else got a question? There's none. Look at councillor Qualman to close.
Thank you.
All right, the motion is that we council receive and note the report, councillors. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 7, corporate credit card policy review, which has been to both finance and audit and risk. Councillor Peach, you.
I'd like to move it with a variation to incorporate the suggestion from councillor Roundtree regarding the ability to contact the mayor with concerns regarding the CEO's credit card. I don't think the current policy and a direct escalation is appropriate.
To you. Mayor. The audit and risk also endorse that position, and the actual requirements from OPR that occurs. So you may want to put that in there, but we would still have an obligation to go to audit OPI as well.
Well, I believe, Mr Mayor, when we raised this at the Finance Committee meeting, we asked for more detail around that, and it's not been provided. If there is a belief of misconduct, understand that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a question, and I think that is more appropriate to go to the mayor, who could then escalate it if that forms into a belief of misconduct. And I would note, Mr Mayor, I did read the document looking for specific feedback around what we asked, and I haven't been able to.
For you, Mayor, given that, and I take your point, councillor Peach, but given that the audit endorsed that process and that comment, we took it as that is what the way to go. And we also sought legal advice originally on whether that should be OPI. So we can write to you and let you know that, but it won't change that particular requirement.
That it goes to OPI?
No.
But there's no particular downside in it coming to the mayor as well?
That's the point that I would make. Escalating it to the mayor with a query, who could then, given the mayor signs off on it in the final instance anyway, I think if this is actually placing a barrier where if somebody's got a question, they may just let it slide because they're not going to want to escalate it to OPI. Whereas I think the framework that Councillor Roundtree put forward actually provides for a more open process in that a query could be raised without fear of retribution or also in that person's mind thinking I'm putting the CEO in a position here where there's a formal process in place.
And through you, Mayor, following on from that too, that if a person did go down that track, through experience, we know when things go to OP, they're always confidential when they come back. Like there's a real, that's it. It's done. It's with OP. There's no more conversation entered into. If it was somebody, and I guess I'm going back through some historical things here, if there had been an opportunity to raise things in a different manner, it could actually solve some problems down the track. I also want to say that when Audit and Risk Committee look at these things, what I've learned is that I guess when an auditor looks at a business, they're looking at your numbers, but the Audit and Risk Committee look at process, not numbers. And they don't go through the nitty-gritties of things. They're really looking at the process has been followed. That's always been my understanding of how it works. That I just feel that putting something like this in there just gives us that little bit more transparency and opportunity to have somebody talk to the mayor if they need to, rather than escalate it.
So you, Mayor, if that process is in place, the mayor would also have an obligation then to go to OP.
Well, only if it was a problem. If it's not a problem, then nothing goes to OP.
No,
it
but
was
if
just-
there is a thought that there is something of a fraud or some sort of a inappropriate activity, there is an obligation to do that. So you can't bypass the obligation to go to OP by including the mayor in the process.
Sorry, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly my point. That the mayor would be obligated to go to OP if there was a issue of either corruption, misconduct, or maladministration, but it gives a staff member the opportunity to say, am I reading this correctly? Before escalating to that process. Sorry.
Slightly different view.
I'm
Being crystal clear.
noticing that council, you haven't really put words to it fully. Would be probably preferable to lay it on the table till such time as that's adjourned is what the words will be in a minute. Because I know, yes, I know, Councillor Bland though.
Okay,
You don't want to second it, I presume?
No, I don't. I have a different view, and that is that by placing anyone, including the mayor, deputy mayor, whomever, in the position of that also potentially puts a gatekeeper in place. And that also may see the mayor ending up with OP for not actually escalating or doing it. And so therefore to have a clear line in relation to this, then I understand what the audit committee was saying and what the policy is. But if we put another person in it to adjudicate and adjudicates one way or the other with all the best intent, may in fact find that the mayor or that person ends up in exactly the same position as the original problem. So a clear line, direct, as much as I don't love the process or I don't love some of the outcomes, it's probably the cleanest line to take. I understand.
Does it have to be either or? Can't it be a both
Well,
kind of situation?
Yeah, Councillor, I think what the best advice I'm receiving is that perhaps we adjourn this item and tidy up it. Since I probably haven't got enough words, Councillor Peach, around what you really.
I'm happy to move to adjourn to the subsequent meeting if we need to.
Do you want to go?
Ashley, can he be the
audit committee
mover
are very clear we
and
want
move to
OP.
adjourn?
I don't have an issue, but how do you ask a question?
I think you can have the mayor as adjudicator. Because it puts he or her in a position. And they incorporate another person, he makes the wrong decision. He also then ends up
No.
being pushed to OP.
There's no statutory.
We've been through some of this living.
So just checking, Councillor Peach, you can not only be the mover of motion. Can you actually give me that answer? Because I've never seen that before.
Mr. Mayor, if I may make a comment, when we look to adjourn this to a subsequent, I would like to see, if possible, a process that doesn't require. If I'm understanding this correctly, if somebody suspects that there has been misconduct or maladministration, that would be an automatic. But if somebody has a question and doesn't feel comfortable going to the CEO to ask them that question about, and I'm not necessarily referring to current people, I'm just talking in practical matters, whether that is the chair of audit and risk, given that we say it goes to audit and risk every 3 months, I think there needs to be an avenue where it can be queried without, particularly if somebody's not confident that it is a case that needs to go to OP.
In the practical sense, that would it would be the governance officer that most staff would go to as a matter of course for that sort of or to Ben in his role or HR. So there are avenues there already that staff would feel, I would suggest, more than comfortable with to ask some advice. And the two directors would also be in that position. So it would have to be quite serious or widespread for there not to be a position within the organisation or a person whose staff would not feel comfortable with. And if it's that serious in that sense, then I would suggest that it is something that should have gone straight to Opie anyway.
So it's a formal motion still, and it gives the reasons for the formal motion.
Mechanism to bring it back, so that's what I've written.
That's what, yeah.
I don't think councillor Peach can
Do it.
move it, because when we come back, we'll come back to the point where you've moved the original motion, if that makes sense.
There's someone else prepared to move the formal motion as is, you can see on the screen. Councillors Rountree and Bland are the two that are moving the formal motion, which I understand you can see behind me, to adjourn. We adjourn until further clarification been sought and provided regarding reporting mechanisms for concerns around the CEO credit card and expenditure. Everyone understand it's a formal motion, councillors? I'm going to put it. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to number 8. Procurement policy review. There's a recommendation we adopt the revised procurement policy as tabled. Councillors, Councillor Rountree?
I have some questions.
Yes.
So I want to further clarify the administration's response to my feedback question around transparency and council members being able to see how the decision was made. Are you saying that the only way council members can see how a decision of council was arrived at in regard to how a contractor was selected is to go through the freedom of information?
Where are you reading, councillor?
The procurement policy, number 8.
Page
So
36.
my questions, I guess, okay, find the exact page on here. So it was I had asked some questions and then there was comments that had come back around that.
Yeah.
And I'm just following up from that a bit further.
Subject to correct question or freedom of information.
So the subject to the correct question and
So-
or there's two parts.
Well, I guess what I was wanting to find out is when a procurement incident happens, or you've picked someone to do the job, and we as an elected group say, how was that arrived at? What I'm reading is, yes, we can see that, but we have to go through freedom of information to get it. Is that what that answer is saying?
There will be occasions where, and I'm thinking of a couple of policies that we've brought to you, procurement contracts that we've brought to you in confidence, that I had the delegation to sign, but because of the level of interest in them, they were brought to the chamber, basically for noting, not for decision. There would be times where, if it's a fairly run-of-the-mill contract, that if there was as much interest in the chamber in it, that you could circulate it in confidence for you to have a look at. Not that you could have an influence on the outcome of that decision, but if you have an interest in it. The issue probably is more around the protection of the commercial and confidence information and the number of contractors who have put in a submission. But I would not be able to think of a case where if you had a genuine interest in what had happened, that we would bring it to you in confidence at either a briefing or to talk you through what had actually happened and how the contract was awarded.
Okay.
If it came to pass where, and I can't think of how that or why that would happen, where I refuse to do that, the FOI is always open to you as an option. And to be perfectly frank, it's probably not something that a CEO with the elected chamber would want to go through in terms of making you go through that process.
And that's, thank you, because that's sort of with my question that I asked and then your answer being, correct, subject to the correct question being of all freedom of information processes followed. So what you're saying there is if we ask the right questions of you, you could give us the information, and if that failed, then it would be a freedom of information. All right, perfect. And the next one I wanted to raise was my next question, which is principle 8 about local industry. I wasn't happy with how that was written, and I have sent you through earlier a had some different wording. I sent it to all the elected members as well, that I think it's been certainly raised in the community that people want to ensure that locals get a good look in. And the way it was written, it's very unlikely that a small local business could be equal to a large, say, multinational business. They're not going to have that same buying power. They're not going to have, and so I really wanted to get some clarification as to what that would look like. And so my suggested wording was that the council acknowledges the vital role of local businesses play in strengthening our district. Therefore, the council will prioritise and give greater preference to businesses operating within the local government boundary whenever possible and where other factors are equal. Local businesses will receive fair and equitable consideration. Now, it's similar wording, but I felt it just strengthened that commitment.
So through you, Mayor, I think the changing of the words to give priority to at the beginning is not possible because all things have to be equal first in terms of an equal footing. And I suppose direct sourcing for those smaller contracts that I think you're alluding to up to 15,000, we do have some flexibility in doing that. Once it starts to get into serious money from a ratepayer perspective, we have to go through a more rigorous process of calling tenders. And then if all things are equal, preference is given if there's a local contractor. But it's all things being equal has to be the starting point from is it economically comparable to what's being offered? Are they available at the times that we need them? Do they have the workforce that we think that they may need? Is there a risk of not being able to deliver on the contract given its size? All those things have to be equal before we could then say, I'm not sure we could say give preference to local providers, because then we would also run the risk of then being accused of not being serious with ratepayer money. So I appreciate what you're saying, but it is complicated to. The only other way you do that is you start to weight things.
Well, that's sort of where my question was. Would we add weighting to a local provider and so I guess with the scheme of things, how it all.
Local content.
Yeah. So what Rex has just reminded me, local content is important. And in a sense, we don't have a formal rating system to that degree, but it is important. But again, it comes back to all other things have to be equal first. It's not the starting point, if you like, which is what you're suggesting in terms of your wording.
Or in the existing wording through Mayor, it says council will give preference to businesses based boundary buying. Operations are equal, fair and equitable consideration to local businesses. And I felt that was sort of a give on one hand, take with the other. Like we're saying we're going to preference it, but you have to be equal to someone else that might, I just didn't think that seemed fair. And I wanted to look at a better wording, but I take your point that we are using ratepayers' money and they'll want the best bang for their buck, so to speak.
Through the chair, there's also a piece of legislation regarding competition. It's not particularly difficult with procurement policy to fall into anti-competitive behaviour. And in fact, I think if you were to say something like we give preference to certain group, locals, then you'll potentially what you can do in terms of content and to even up, even if you're dealing with a large company that may not be like as purchasing power, is if you're tendering, they need to demonstrate local content. So in fact, they have the ability to employ that local business person. So, and we'll go as far as really pushing that in the tender process to see that it's demonstrated.
I guess in the wording through Mayor that I where it says council will prioritise and give greater preference, it could be just greater weighting or greater consideration.
Appropriate weight.
Appropriate weighting would also work. I'd be interested in what anyone else thinks. Maybe I'm just.
So you in principle, Abe, would like to see the words changed to appropriate weighting instead of your preference to.
Well, in the wording that I had emailed earlier today, where I've used the word preference, I think appropriate weighting would be, I'd be happy to change preference to that. I take your point about the word preference.
Can Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Yep, certainly.
I think this might be another instance of councillor Roundtree's emails not coming through on time. I haven't received it.
I haven't either.
And that's what I was thinking too, but
I haven't either.
And she did tell me a little while ago she'd sent it and it
Was
still
it
hasn't
this
come
morning?
through, which seems to be a problem with her council emails from time
My
to time.
council
got anything
emails
from you
take
this morning.
forever to come through then. That's interesting. I wonder you're staring at me blankly.
I'm looking at the directors to see what the consequences of
Interesting.
they can give preference and changing that to appropriate weighting.
Well, credit weighting is not so specific. I think you can work
Disconnected
with
from the network, that's why.
weighting, whereas preference is very specific and I think it could
It's
be
stronger.
problematic.
So in the procurement policy, we're yet to have a mover. If we were to change those two words out, does that satisfy you, councillor?
Sorry, say again, I was trying to find the.
If we were to, in principle 8, change it from council will give preference to council will give appropriate weighting to local businesses, is that satisfying your?
Let me
thing?
just find it again, sorry. So in your wording, council will give appropriate weighting to businesses based in life. Yes,
So that could be in the motion, could be just an addition if you were to be the mover in a minute. I've got councillor Maidment and councillor Bland. I'm just going to go to them, councillor. No, councillor Maidment's first.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just a quick devil's advocate question with, if you're waiting to a particular business, are you then giving them preference?
I appreciate.
All things being equal.
I
All
appreciate-
things being equal. So if you're waiting to a local business, you're giving
Yeah.
them preference. It's not all fair and equal. Being devil's advocate. Sorry, not helping.
I'm looking at the director, sorry.
Through the chair, maybe as an example, not work in practice is when we typically set, particular tender, we outline the criteria and the weighting for how the evaluation panel, how we're going to evaluate that tender. So in question posed, we might say that the local element, the local part of that evaluation, we might give that a weighting of 15%. And so it's clear to all tenderers that the local content, and that's what out of 100, that's what we'll provide.
Mm.
Price alone might be 40%, and you make everything up to equal to 100. We have to have WHS compliance in there, ability to deliver the services. But that's a way where, transparency perspective, you would show that that's the important weighting for the local content, and it's done in a way that all tenderers are aware whether they're local or whether they're not.
and that's what you do now, or that's what you can?
Well, that's what you typically do now. Yeah.
In the big contracts.
Councillor Bland.
I think, Mr Mayor, Director has answered the question. Mine was around how the weighting is functional and how it's transparent, and he's answered that beautifully. Thank you.
Okay, I am still to accept a motion or have someone move a motion. Councillor Arthur.
Just one question. 4.7 is sort of wraps it up in a little way, doesn't it? Buy local and social procurement. Council support local business and consider social outcomes when undertaking procurement. Further, council aim increase opportunities of participation in local suppliers, manufacturers who can just demonstrate capability, capacity and competitiveness. Now, unfortunately, within our system, correct me if I'm wrong now, if you're not a preferred supplier, you're not in the ballpark.
In some instances, that is the case. However, what?
You know, I'm only looking at small projects, you know, like your road projects, or they're a different thing, but, you know, fixing up little jobs and that sort of thing.
Yep.
You've got to be a preferred contractor, which means you've got to fill out a book about that big for our council, and there's no certainty you'll ever get a job.
So through the chair, in the eyes of the law, if were something to happen, that contractor is an employee of council.
Yeah.
So
And that's why there was an article in the Advertiser 3 weeks ago regarding local government procurement contracts where it costs local government a lot of money, because you've got a preferred contractors against someone else. Perfect example, for 2 days ago, hot water service down at Tendy electrician comes from Murraybridge or Tailem Bend to fix, there's always two. There's always going to be two electricians together, fix it. There's a local electrician 10 minutes away, but he's not the preferred contractor. You know, so it costs $500, picks up a $30.
I know, councillor, I think your question.
But that's where this policy
Yeah.
is a bit silly.
Well, it has to also balance up against probity and expenditure of public money.
Yep.
Assuming that the contractor generally.
Yeah. So that's the dilemma we face. I thought you asked a question and since I haven't taken you to speak it. Now, I haven't got a motion, councillor. I'm looking to councillor Roundtree. If in principle 8, we changed those two words, whether she be the mover of it.
Yes, I will.
So can we actually just note that in principle 8, well, I think it was so I'm not taking councillor Roundtree. Yeah, principle 8, those 2 word changes. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Bland to be the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it now?
I've said enough.
Councillor Bland is the seconder.
Those two changes, particularly given that the process was.
Right, it's open for debate, councillors. Okay, if there's no one else, councillor, with those minor word changes, you're closing, councillor.
Closed.
So that the recommendation is that council adopt the revised procurement policy as tabled with slight amendment. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 9, new policy, hospitality recognition, gift and employee expenses.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move, please, with the amendments I've sent through to the front.
You'd like to move, sorry, I'll pick this up.
I'm hoping. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful.
An extra reference documents. I haven't seen this yet, so I'm away.
Sorry, so if I may provide background commentary while waiting for that.
Yes.
So in the Ombudsman's report document that she referenced continually, which is the Reward and Recognition Good Practice Guide for South Australian Public Sector Managers, and that seemed to be the basis of her report. It's not currently referenced in our policy, so I was just going to move as part of this that we add it to the related documents. And I would also like to include, where any reference is made in the policy to flowers, the addition of the words "and other significant life event" to the current wording. And so that's the 2 aspects that I'd like to move that vary from what's presented.
Have you sent these through?
Yes, sorry.
Giving a bit of time because.
I'd like to push them a bit, not the audit committee, I'd like to push yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. This one is the first one.
Councillor, is section 5.2.6, is that not covering the second other significant life event or not?
It probably does, but it's in the other definitions, it's probably more specific. So I think it complements that. So if you look at the checklist aspect, it's quite specific, whereas that 5.2.6 does talk about life-changing event.
That's through you, Mayor. Could I suggest then that the amendment is that the 5.2.6, the words in the glossary and the checklist reflect those words?
I would be happy with that too.
Sorry.
Be happy with that.
I'm going to let this be worded for a minute or so, because I'm. You want to speak about something else besides
Um,
flowers?
Yeah, well, it's not on flowers, but I have another question.
Well, that's
or a
been worded up.
suggestion.
Yep.
So mine is, if it was deemed appropriate by the staff, is there a mechanism whereby elected members could contribute to the staff Christmas party and attend if they wish?
For you, Mayor, that would be done outside the policy. That would be just a conversation we would have with you if you want to come along or you want to contribute. I don't think we would need to include that in the policy.
So the staff Christmas party, as in the one that council puts on,
Yeah, so in the past, we've attended those,
and we're not having a
Party.
party anymore.
We're having a rewards night.
Rewards evening, council.
Well, I still think it would be a good bridge if we could contribute to that event financially, make it bigger and better, and attend if we felt that if staff were happy with us attending. If they'd rather just keep it at staff, I respect that as well, but I just thought it'd be an opportunity if we wanted to, we could participate.
Well, I think we're invited now.
Yes, correct.
Always been invited to the Christmas party. It's just in
We don't
December.
contribute anything financially towards it, do we? Because it was always covered from council, but now that there's a requirement to pay, wouldn't it be nice? if we-
After hours too.
There would be
Yeah.
no impediment to councillors and
While there's, if councillors are asked to attend a function in their normal function of duties, they have a meal as part of that process, that's covered in our other processes, I think. No different to you'd make the donation to who?
Well, the
To
slush
the
fund.
staff, the staff employee fund.
Sorry. So
could I suggest, Mayor, that maybe if a councillor was keen to help support a particular event of council, that they let me know and we might then allocate a particular expense to that councillor, rather than a contribution. I'm now getting a little nervous of actually your money coming into the
Yeah,
public money arena.
I'm actually too, because there's a,
Okay, well, I don't want to make this complicated. I just thought it would
There's
be
various
a
nuances
good
of this that could be-
synergy between us all to do
could
it.
be
We'll start
seen
with-
to be influencing staff, councillor.
Oh, really?
If-
Oh,
Yeah, I actually am thinking how it could be.
right, okay, well, let's not do that.
Yeah, Councillor Peach, are you,
Sorry,
you
just
on your first point or we're on a different?
on my second point up there, and table 2, because table 2's current wording is very exclusive. And I think 5.2.6 is better reflective of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
It's not glossary, is it? Oh, that's my term. So maybe it was this, sorry.
1 and 2.
Table 1 and 2, yep. Table 2 currently is very exclusive, and I think 5.2.6 is a better reflection of wording.
Not yet. I'm waiting till councillor Peach is happy with these 2 additional points.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Look for a seconder. Councillor Maidman. You 3 are all working at the same time today. Councillor Maidman, you seconder. Councillor Peach, you want to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do hope that this provides somewhat of a sensible way forward, and I would encourage council to advocate where possible for the state government to perhaps wind back some of the Ombudsman's findings in a more practical sense, because I do think the Ombudsman did go above and beyond. Personally, I would say that the Ombudsman went above and beyond what they should have done.
Certainly have given a very strict interpretation in recent years.
Mm.
Councillor Maidman, you want us to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think it's all been said.
Okay, anyone else for or against? There is no one else. You will close, councillor.
So closed.
Councillor Peach's motion is in with those additions to the recommendation on the screen. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's now carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 10, minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on the 6th of August. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Peach, you're moving. You're a seconder.
I wasn't there, I can't.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, well then, yeah, okay.
Councillor Roundtree is a seconder. Any discussion? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Number 11, Audit and Risk Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of August last week. Council received the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee's meeting summary report as tabled. Councillor Qualman is the mover. A seconder, Councillor Bland. Any discussion, councillors? There is none. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. How are we feeling? We're on a 5-minute break or not?
Oh, no, I'm fine.
All right, plough on. Well, first in, best rest. 11.1, information reports. Councillors, Office of the Chief Executive Officer, questions? Councillors, Councillor Roundtree.
Under tourism development, it talks about the Canalpan Caravan Park, that there were transactions declined. Do we know why they're declined? Is that just from the person's point of view, or is it something to do with the machinery at our end?
Through you, Mayor, I don't know directly, but I would assume it's the
Yeah, their end.
users end.
Okay, yeah, users end, yeah.
Councillors, questions?
I'm just trying to find.
Councillor Bland, yes.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, it's fine.
I have one. First one, I guess, is around requests for service. And
Page.
I haven't got there, that's why I'm jumping to my notes, sorry.
Mhm.
Generally, it's a general question. So in that, it's feedback from that the job is being done or not done unless the individual follows up themselves. They're not actually getting the feedback that I understand is our policy. Just to, even if it's a message, an email to say, job done, etc. Any further concern, let me know. The automatic.
Through you, Mayor, are you talking about residents' inquiries?
A request for service. And I'm not saying it's not being done in a timely fashion. I'm just saying that a part of it was that people got at least a comment back. Our form says, do you want feedback? And being somebody who does put some in, I know that I'm one that doesn't necessarily give feedback, but I believe that that's normal practice. You don't get feedback. I know that staff are busy, but we ask community to do it and we don't respond.
Through you, Mayor, I'll take that on notice and I'll have a look at how many we actually do provide feedback, how many actually pick the form, and I'll come back to you at a session and I'll send you the information on that. I can't tell you off the top of my
I think
head.
it'd be good to know because certainly a comment.
You had a second one, councillor.
I do, but I'll have to find it.
Right, councillor Roundtree again then.
Any update with the Changing Places grant? I saw that it's now a design. Have we moved forward in that area?
Yes, so we are still waiting on the agreement, to the funding agreement, but we've been told that it's forthcoming. So we're moving towards it. We're expecting that we'll be provided with funding towards the end of the year. Construction to start shortly after.
That's great, thank you.
And so in addition to that, I reminded people they'll need development approval as well for this. We've got that moving.
The DA has.
We've got that commenced.
Yeah.
Councillor Roundtree, you done?
Oh, I have a couple more.
Yeah, no, you're
Right.
ahead. Just ask.
So under meetings attended by the CEO, just wondering, yeah, on the 9th of July, you met with the Meningie Community Library. Just wondering if there's any update on that one.
What page are you on, councillor?
Your, the meetings attended by the CEO, that page?
Open that.
79, there you go.
Sorry, which date?
9th of July.
So the Director of Roads and Infrastructure and I met with the Director from Education there. It was around 3 parts. We talked to them about Wadmore House, we talked to them about childcare activities, and we talked to them about the expansion and the refurbishment of the school at Meningie. The Director has undertaken to come back to us with some questions that we asked around that. One of them predominantly was Wadmore House. We've now received a letter from the Minister advising that the encumbrance on the building can be changed to suit the community's needs, or if that's not the case, then we can give it back to the Minister. We're still not finished that conversation because we think there's probably other things that we may want to talk to them about yet, and we will provide a briefing to council on what they will be soon. With the childcare one, that wasn't her area of responsibility, and she has passed that on to another member of her staff. We got something from the Minister today about childcare and some funding, but I haven't heard anything from the departments per se yet. But we are continuing to research and look at opportunities for childcare options and models across this district that would suit, definitely not from a council perspective of running them, but what other models there are. And there are several around the state already. It's just looking at what might work and then how you make that happen. And with the third one around the libraries, she undertook to talk with the her colleague around that, and she was to come back because one of the questions I asked was that at some point she needs to brief council because there have been no decisions or motions at council, and she was unaware of that. I get the sense that this is probably the first school community library that has been built for a very long time, and there is very little expertise in the education department around how that all happens. And so I think they're going through a process of discovery, but they are very clear that there's been no motion or decision of council, and that at some point they will need to come to address us if they think there is some part that the council plays in that building.
Thank you, that was very good, interesting.
Councillor Bland.
And if but I'm just going to go back to SACA, in that I am the council rep on that committee. I spoke to the CEO some time ago saying that I haven't been attending. I attended Saturday night a couple of Zoom meetings. I'll leave that alone as to about how valuable I thought that was. And there was sort of a watching brief at this stage by staff and CEO. However, I do note that jetties are starting to get a bit of airplay. And if council feels that it may be something that we need to look closer at.
Yeah, so yeah, councillor, and I might add, and just the 6 river councils, of which we are one in the Marylands, Riverland, Alexandrine has picked up. Also, 5 of them, we are actually in a sort of have a bit of a watching brief on this too, because it may be at some point that coastal alliance issues are very similar to anything near the water, which the river councils felt a bit excluded out of yet. Bit of a grey area in the local government process at the moment.
And Mr. Mayor, you know, if you just read even the minutes that are in here, you see that it's quite clearly mostly coastal. And while we have the Coorong, which is coastal, and the river and lake, etc., we don't actually get a lot of airplay in this. And how we bring that forward with the river, I don't know, but we've never had a lot of airplay.
No, and it's
that'd be
interesting.
right. Councillor Arthur was there before.
Yeah, over half of the councils in the state are on the coastal alliance anyway. At some point, when is it basically an issue for nearly every council in the state? You put another 5 councils in, the river council is not represented there yet. The danger may be that things like the boating facilities fund be used for jetties or something along those lines, and without any representation from other beneficiaries along the river, which have the boating facilities fund. As part of MRLGA's meeting here a couple of weeks ago on the Friday, we went to Renmark. and afterwards went down and viewed the amount of money they're spending on their wharf redevelopment. We're very glad we don't rebuild wharfs like they are in terms of expense. Be a beautiful finish, but extremely expensive.
And so I think that, we need to have a discussion at some point, how that's going to move forward, how that might look. And right now, Jetty's money could quite clearly be sitting at danger.
Yes. Yeah, there's several ways. Any other questions in relation?
No.
Okay. Any other councillors got, councillor Maidment, with questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, through you. I've got two in this part. The community grants, outstanding acquittals. I'll talk about this a bit. The Tintinara group mentioned there, do they still exist? I'm just asking because it's 2 years and what's going on with that one?
For you, Mayor, we are in constant contact with those three, I think it is, or 4 organisations that are outstanding. They have finished.
Okay. So that, and I know it's not a significant amount of money, but it's still money owed or needs to be acquitted.
I think we've
It's an
spent more than
acquittal process.
$400.
Yeah, and then that comes back to the Kermadec Gym, same thing, is it? Still going there? Okay. My next part of this 11.1 is to actually compliment the workers, the volunteers at Kantara, is that how you say it? Kantara Homestead. They're doing a wonderful job there with the tree planting, and I'm wondering, seeing as I'm not really that new, but I'm going to use that tag again, the history, just a very brief Kantara. Do you know how because it wasn't always councils, I gather, was it? It was
Councillor
a
Bland
private
is our
property.
best hope in this room, I believe.
Was it on?
Councillor Corman, or it might be on notice.
I was just curious more than.
Councillor O'Hara.
Kantara, is that a national park?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
There. Sounds like we're taking this on notice, councillor.
Okay.
Kantara has a huge history. It's a beautiful space.
Yeah.
It's great that they're doing that. And I know Councillor O'Hara has spent some time in that area more recently.
Yeah.
So I'll gear him up to make sure he gives a full report on the history.
Well, perhaps between the relevant officers and councillor O'Hara, when he returns, we'll fill you in.
It looked lovely on the photos.
Our council
Thank you.
goes a lot further south than some people understand.
Yes.
Okay, that was your questions. Any
That's-
other councillors got questions in the
all for that
information
bit,
report?
yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to move to someone moving the recommendation, please.
I'll move it.
Councillor Maidment is the mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Qualman. Any further questions? There being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. So we will move on to number 2, Community and Corporate Information Report. Councillors, the questions? Councillor Roundtree first.
Don't drop your shoulder.
Just on the work health and safety and risk management report, there were 2 incidences of aggressive customers. Are we able to know anything more about what that was? Unhappy ratepayers?
We'll take that on notice, councillor.
Okay.
You had 2 things or anyone?
Notice that one.
Councillor Bland?
I have one in, sadly, with our community facility team member leaving from Meningie. Are we advertising yet, or are we moving staff around, cover the areas that now will be missed?
Through the chair, we've already been out to market and we've appointed a new staff member who starts Monday.
I think I signed up on it today.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks' time, Monday fortnight. I'll start.
Thank you.
Councillor Peach?
Just noting the rate inquiries for July, were over 100 people. And if you take the walk-ins as well, we're looking at 120, 130, and noting that's only in the last 13 days of July. How does that compare to historical data?
We'd have to take that on notice and compile that graph.
It seems quite high in a very short space of time.
So probably the most notable query was related to valuation increases. I think the Value General went through and did quite a thorough refresh, and some people were quite surprised about valuations. But there was nothing coming out that related to anything that was to things that were largely under council's control, apart from a few, normal changes that you'd expect in terms of names, addresses and update information. But information I got from customer service staff, there was common questions around why has my valuation gone up X. Not surprising.
No.
Councillor, just on that, I think it was in the LGA's weekly new update. It comes out on Monday morning. I should make an assumption you will by email. There was a link to the Value General's annual report, which is quite interesting reading in terms of percentage average increases by council across the state. Yeah, we're just going to check that.
All councillors get that?
Do we all get that on a Monday morning? It comes out.
Was it cool? Local
Local government, South Australia's.
We didn't. I certainly didn't receive it yesterday. I have seen some LGS, but yeah.
It's one of the complications that we have through SACA. No, what's the other committee I'm on? SAROC and that we make an assumption that everyone gets emails, and it appears sometimes no one does. So. But it was quite interesting. It was the annual report of the Value General, actually, Councillor. It was very interesting. The point I might make about that is we were not by any means the highest increased council in the state, but it was fair to say that most of the higher ones were rurals, regionals or cities.
I didn't get it Monday either.
No, well, look, so we
will check.
Yeah, check this out, because I thought everyone got it the way I read it, but anyway.
Through the mayor, I think that one may end up.
There you go.
And if not, we can certainly add you to the list.
It was junk or not, but it's sometimes interesting reading. Who else has got questions? Sorry. Councillor Maidment.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, this is probably silly, but on page 87, what's DACO? DACO, dog and cats? What I thought it was. Thank you for that. The next one is page 88. The customer requests that are there. Let me just get it up again. We've got in progress, outstanding, completed, but what were they? What are people requesting be done? There's nothing stating there what they are.
For you, councillor, maybe the customer requests and what they were are on page 87 in the bar graph that goes in the horizontal bar graph.
Yeah, that's not coming up on mine.
And so, and then page 88 is really just a snapshot of the timeframes that they've taken to be completed or are still outstanding.
I see, right, because it's gone over 2 pages.
Correct.
Thank you for that.
Other councillors with questions? Being none, someone please move the recommendation. Councillor Maidment is the mover and.
Just, we're on the roads and infrastructure report.
Not yet.
Sorry, we're not. No, okay.
You want to second the other one, though?
Yeah, why not?
Councillor Bland beat you. There's no further discussion around the corporate community information report. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Roundtree, yes, we now move to roads and infrastructure. You all got questions?
I just have yes, I have a question. The EV station, there is some chatter about the EV station at Taylor Bend, wondering if there is a plan. Have we given any thought to that as in any of our beautification plans, that area?
For you, Mayor, there is a budget for that for this financial year to extend that ceiling around that.
Thank you.
I've seen some of the chatter, councillor, yes, but there is actually another budget line that I suppose was designed in concert with that, but the RAA's process was a separate one. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Roundtree's on the same question or same subject I wish to raise. I've just had some queries regarding why we've only probably got a quarter of seal, and there's on page 108 there's base preparation done prior to sealing, so we've done the base work and the RA has paid for that little bit of
Don't think we've
bitumen.
done anything at this stage.
No.
Through the chair,
Right.
that's just RAA at the moment.
Good,
We're
right.
doing our bit early in the new year at this stage.
Okay. Yep, and
See how you could find that misleading, councillor, yes.
yes, and thank you, Mr Mayor, on that.
Yeah.
The other part of that is there's been a bit of should say excitement on social media about why it was put there, and maybe the director through the chair of Roads and the Structural Advisors why it was put there.
CEO is going to have a crack at
Or
this
the
one.
CEO, please.
So we have, I can circulate to you the report that went to council in March of this year regarding that, and the level of consultation that happened in the community. That report also shows the feedback from all participants in the survey. I think from memory, and Ash will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there was 28 submissions of one sort or another. And overall, the support for the location and the support for EVs, I think from memory, were around about 75% for each. And so councillors, when you made that decision, you were privy to all that information.
Councillors, I'm well aware of the conjecture in the community around the sites. I think the RAA probably could have handled it far better, actually, because they probably initially didn't understand local government processes around public land and Crown land, and probably no one initially thought about how easy or cheap or whatever it would be to get the appropriate amount of power
Yeah.
at the appropriate public site. And there's plenty of questions about, well, they've got to drive in at right angles. Well, that's the process at the moment. If they've got a caravan on, I don't know. They'll probably be going backwards home. Not yet. I thought they were good too. The point is that it's an interesting process that we've been involved in. And I think if I had my time again, we'd do it a bit differently.
And if I may too, though, Mr Mayor, that the other main reason was sufficient voltage supply.
That's right. And it was a fair amount of power. It's not just a standard
Yes, correct.
suburban connection, which is drove the initial change at Meningie inside.
That's what happened down Meningie, that's correct.
And I suppose if I was to be disappointed with the Tailem Bend site, we've got another Stobie pole or two. I just thought they'd just dig under the road and be done with it. But anyway.
That's what you mean. We did, with RAA, explore what other sites, but as the mayor said, it did come down to power and availability.
That's what I
I think
thought.
I'm with councillor Bland before you, councillor Peach.
Okay.
Just information following up the EV station, and that is the line marking with the change to the EV station. Sitting on the corner, which is one that's not particularly safe overall, offset, et cetera, the line marking along Narung Road to change the position so it doesn't actually affect the way people cut in at the corner.
We'll take that on notice and have a look
At
at
the
it.
line marking of the public Narung Road in that case.
Correct, in front, from
Ah,
there
yeah,
down,
yeah,
and how
right.
that might look, and safety.
It's a bit sort of casual, that corner, isn't it?
Yes, I think we need to be a little bit more prescriptive.
Councillor Peach.
Just while we're on that, I had a question. I've heard a bit of a rumour that we might be getting one of these in Tintinara. Can I ask where, how and why and where that's at, please?
We're still, RAA have made the preliminary contact. Basically, I think they've made a suggestion around the big Emu Spring Road. We're going backwards and forwards with them about whether that's appropriate or not. So it's too early, but they are looking definitely at a site in Tintinara. And I think from memory, and Josh, you can chime in, but I think it's the last one they're going to be doing across the state. So they're keen to have it done probably by Christmas, I think is their timeframes, but we're still in the backwards and forwards stage with them.
And further to that, we've been very clear an appropriate design. So they've given us an initial concept. We've gone back with queries and concerns, and just stressing that it'll need to go to council and it'll need to go to public consultation.
Would it be possible to request that they provide alternate sites rather than just one?
I think we're having that discussion now because there is opportunity, or we were thinking with the refurbishment of the park across the road, was there anything over there as well? So we are looking, and if you've got a suggestion as well, please let us know because we're more than happy to raise it with them.
Councillor Roundtree.
One of the strong criticisms of Taylor has been how far the location is away from the businesses, and they've got to cross over 4 lanes of traffic to get into the town with dogs or kids or elderly or whatever. There's no shelter there on a hot day. And I guess if we're going to look at doing something with that area, perhaps we should also factor in at some point somewhere shady to sit, because you can't sit in your car for a long charge on a hot day. And even a 20-minute charge on a fast charge, it's going to be a really unpleasant experience. So that was certainly something that was raised. And I don't know whether there were other places in Taylor Bend we could have gone. I felt we were only given really one option. And I would support if there are other options for Tintinara that we definitely have some consideration, because my view was that was the only place in Taylor Bend that was suitable. But I have had since that time, I've had people approach me and say, no, there were other places that it could have gone and we didn't do it.
We certainly had the conversation with them about alternates, particularly in the main street, and for the very reasons that you mentioned. Yesterday, when we were talking about the second part of the ceiling, which is the council's responsibility, we also will try and squeeze out a bit of landscaping to soften the area. And also the issue of tables and chairs came up as well. So both of those things, if we can squeeze them out within budget, we will do that as well.
Under that pole pepper tree over there.
And through Mayor, just on that too, one of the things that was suggested for Canalpin, and it would be applicable to Taylor and Meningie, was even just a QR code on a sign that said, these are the things you can go and do in this town, and it's only 600 metres to the bakery or whatever it is.
Sorry, I should have mentioned signage was also yesterday's conversation.
And perhaps another point, councillors, with Taylor Bend, if we remember back far enough, is that there is public toilets. They're just down the stairs.
That's going to be very hard for some people to get down.
Well, it will always be hard. Yeah, I accept
So like
that.
for some people, that'll be impossible.
Yeah, I know. But one of the reasons that site was chosen over others was that. So, and the reality is the site opposite the police station, Taylor Bend, is yet to be relinquished by the Crown till they come up with the goods on tidying it up, basically. We know how long that took at Meningie to tidy up. Okay, I'm still on questions in this report. Councillor Maidment and Councillor Bland.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I've got 2 very quick questions. Still on the EV charging stations, I'm afraid. I'm just querying why Meningie's is concreted and Taylor Bend's is bitumised,
Good question.
given that RAA did both.
I would have to take that on notice. My guess would be, it would simply be that asphalt, and given perhaps the size of the area that needed to be done, they've chosen asphalt for Taylor Bend. Meningie, because it's off the road, it's not part of the road. That's why it was concrete, but I'll need to take that on notice and come back out of session.
Thank you. And my second question very quickly is, and just very quickly find it. Oh, can we get a paper copy of the Canalpin Changing Places concept plan? So this is hard to read on the computer. Is that possible? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, the current plan is a concept plan, so we have submitted that to a universal design architect to ensure that it meets all the criteria of changing places. But I can certainly circulate that.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Mayor, on that changing places toilet, it does accommodate babies in there. I couldn't see it from the picture, but it does. Yeah, okay.
What those parties just about?
Or parties, baby.
Councillor Bland, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Footpath renewal, Princess Highway, Meningie, which is in front of the post office. I know community discussion that people have written to council or sent emails. They also said they haven't necessarily had any responses. And their concern, certainly what is here, possibly fine. However, the parking that goes further along, further south, and the access, because there is insufficient parking. When you have a look at that, we're basically effectively in front of 2 car parks. But anyone who parks further up has to step out into the gutter or onto the highway. There's inadequate car parking, and if you look at the angle of the footpath, it's basically a goat track of about 18 inches in the old term, where elderly people have to get out. Now, I have had discussion with staff over too. I know it's not simple. The Telstra's got all its infrastructure in the footpath, but we need to actually do some cleaning up there so that people can step out and get up. Their alternative is, in some cases, to walk park across the road, which is often full in front of the police station, and then ramble across the highway, which can be fairly busy, and it is also unsafe. And this is an issue going further south too. I'll declare now that I may have a conflict of interest here as you get further south, but not just yet. Fix the post office, I think, and the ability for people. We are an ageing community. It's unsafe. But I appreciate what's being done so far.
Through the chair, I believe that those requests have been responded to now. They were raised. However, the area in question, that'll be new infrastructure, and we didn't have the budget this year to include it. So as an interim measure, we can certainly go in and have a look at trying to clean up the area and make safe as best we can.
It's like that. It's about that wide for elderly people to get out and climb along. If you open your door onto the highway, it's not well marked. People are unsafe. And that's just a reality. We need to have marking a little bit the same as the centre of town, so that trucks are actually, and caravans are actually staying in their lane, which means that there's a space out that people can get out and have some space behind. How that looks in terms of road traffic.
We'll have a look at it, councillor.
Councillors, I've been approached about what in the future we might do in terms of parking on Matson Street. You can see in that photo. Don't know how active that business is there at the moment, but
One on the corner opposite the hotel.
yeah, opposite the post office there where it says Matson Street on the.
That isn't active, and that would be our footpath, where it's a bit like the Hood's footpath. The businesses have been on there. We certainly would have some space both sides of those footpaths.
It's probably a future project.
In that whole space, that section.
Certainly could in the future. Okay. Yep. As is the case in some country areas, they were effectively the possession of the business adjoining them.
It's neither businesses are now functional.
Yeah.
We could basically take them back.
Okay. Any other questions in the report? There being none, I probably do need a mover in a second today. Councillor Maidman and Roundtree. Ready to further discussion? There being none, for the motion, all those in favour? I'm going to take it because everyone's in favour. I've seen a jack in the box hand show then. I'm going to declare that carried unanimously, please. Righto, going straight through. Questions with notice. We'll roll through them. Question 12.1. The answer there, councillor?
We're waiting for it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
wait.
so, unfortunately, it's not till November till we find out anything that's going on. Is that correct?
Yep. There's some money there to put
Halfway
there.
through the year?
Yep. Your second one, the way I read
It's
it's about
been
roll.
covered
Been
today
covered
in the
today in
workshop, I
a
think.
previous thing, and further work's been undergone, or will be undergoing around rollers. The third one.
Third one is, I'd just like to ask, I don't know, I'm still trying to work out how local government finances work here. And so we've got roughly $900,000 we've spent on purchases. The written down values is approximately 170,000. And the sale of the items is approximately 300,000. Now, could please, someone explain to me how that now works into the financial system. I know in private enterprise how it works. I'd like to know how it does in local government. Because your capital values and all those things have changed dramatically. Is it just 600,000 goes into your capital values because you bought 9, sold 3, but then you've written 170 of it off?
So there'll be, through you, Mayor, there'll be two parts to the question, I think, or the first one will be around the management of the assets, and the value will be shown, and then the written down value, and then the depreciation comes into that, which is what is needed then to replace that asset. In terms of the cash flow, the money that is comes from the sale of those assets goes into the bank, and the money that is used to purchase those assets comes out of the bank.
Where does it show in the financials?
It will be both in the,
Or is it just general revenue?
there'll be two parts. There'll be one in the, I'm going to call them the old name, I'm going to call them the profit and loss. Thank you. Proceeds from sale, and that's shown quite clearly in the statements. And we can send you another copy of those, Councillor Arthur, and put some arrows and answer your
And
question on that.
last year for the first time, we had sale of assets. $215,000, I think it was.
I'm not sure it's the first time, but anyway.
Well, it's the same as the salaries bit. You show me previously, the previous 12 months where it's actually in anything that's presented.
Right.
But, and now the other thing is where the written down value of these things is, for example, 13,000, we got 11. So if you lost 2,000, but then there's written down value 7, you get 16 for it. They value all over the place. Now, where does that come in? Where does that assets taken there?
Josh,
Have another
please.
go.
Through the chair. So the written down value is you have 5 years on a Ford Ranger Ute. After 5 years, there'll be a value left in the ute, which is what that written down value is. Now, when we go to sell, we'll get what the market pays. So sometimes there are, and how those, the useful lives of a vehicle and those written down values, they're, now I don't know, they're part of the asset management plan for plant and fleet, and there are typical guidelines for what the typical useful life of a ute is, what the typical useful life of a truck is. And so we use them as the guideline to drive that depreciation amount.
And that relates to your depreciation figures.
Correct.
Correct, right? So all of a sudden now, you're going to have an extra $900,000 in the plant and machinery for depreciation. Or does the 300,000 come off, as there's only 6, and the 130 come off? How's it work?
I think it's a question for another time because
Through you, Mayor.
I've only got these figures.
I need a simpler book entry discussion. Josh, do you want to have one more go?
So this is 1 year in isolation. So this is not new. We're not adding new plant to the existing list. We're taking a piece of plant off and we're adding a new piece of plant. And so there isn't a $900,000 increase in depreciation. Increase in the total value. Will be some movement because a vehicle will cost more than what it did 5 years ago. We already value off and we replace that vehicle.
Yeah.
So there will be movement when it comes to revaluations, but there's not new assets, new fleet going into that. We've purchased and replaced that plant.
I wonder if we could have a written explanation of that to the CEO.
I think the only way to explain it, councillor, will be to actually identify in the statement, in the annual returns, just where each of those figures sits in the process. Otherwise, we'll still have trouble tracking it. Councillor Peach, I think you've got your.
I do.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do understand now where Councillor Arthur's coming from in terms of the depreciation and material impact on what we're budgeting for would, I presume, have gone up. But so I'm very keen to support seeing how that would impact that in writing. I just had some questions regarding the sale process of the vehicles. Understanding it's under a policy, I believe, of ours. But I was a little surprised at some of the dollar amounts achieved for these vehicles. I think would have been quite comfortable paying that for some of these. So I just wondered if we could have some comment on that. And I also had a specific question regarding the New Holland, the age of that machine, the hours on it, and whether a reserve was placed on it when it was sold.
Yes, Josh.
So under our asset disposal policy, there are a range of options for us for administration to dispose of vehicles. That includes select tender, expressions of interest, trade-in, public auction. So at the moment, we go through public auction. When a vehicle is determined to go to auction, then that vehicle down there, they will do a detail, they'll do a once-over mechanical check. They will compare against other listings and based on kilometres or hours, and come back to us with a reserve price, what they think they can get in the market if it was to go to auction in the effectively sooner rather than later. It goes to auction. We then have it doesn't meet reserve, and if it goes above reserve, well then we still have to accept once the auction's closed. But that's how a vehicle is disposed of. In the case of the New Holland tractor, that piece of plant had 8,500 hours on it. Placed on it.
Thank you.
I'm still in questions, I think. Oh, no, I'm not in questions. I mean, this one. Everyone's happy with that? We move on to the next one of the questions on notice, with notice. There's an answer there, councillor. Let's see, that shows the ones that are carryover projects.
Can I just ask this question, Mr. Mayor?
Question on a question.
Grant, we always have been getting for some time on the 30th of June. Right? Last year, because we received on the 30th of June, it gives us the $2.5 million cash in hand. Right? This year, because we're not getting it, all of a sudden we've got a large deficit. But its impact on last year's budget is only a book figure because this is expenditure in this financial year. So how is it going to, be a $3.17 million deficit?
So you meant the same way as it was a couple of $1 million surplus the year before. The timing of this grant always will have a direct impact on the final end of year figures from a cash point of view.
Councillor, in my view, yeah, they've done us a favour. They paid it on the 1st of July every year. It'd make.
Well, paid it
I would be very bored in answering your question.
But it was for expenditure for July, June next year. It was always paid in advance of when it was to be expended, which always made our
figures.
I've been on this for 12 years.
Perhaps it's not a true.
Well, why is it making such a big deficit this year when we're not getting it?
Sorry, through the chair. No, it's a deficit 23, 24. It's actually a surplus this financial year. That's what it paid in this financial year. But clearly, if you're talking about the effect about a deficit, it has changed the surplus position from last financial year to a deficit. And that's clear here in the report.
Which financial year were you talking about, councillor?
You said there was going to be a $522,000 deficit, right?
Which financial year?
Which financial year are you talking to?
Yeah, but we haven't received 2.65 million, so that makes it 3.1 theoretical, not actual. And then we've got to adjust into 24, 25s plus 2.65 million.
Correct.
So where does all of a sudden we're going to have to go for a lot more money?
No.
Because a lot of these things, that this 2.65 won't be, may not be done before Christmas.
Councillor, if the federal government, they say they intended to pay it prior to the 30th of June, and it was not, at least in South Australia, affected. It didn't happen. strangely enough, if they pass on the 1st of July for the grant due in the year, starting on 1st of July, I think the questions between you and me around this subject will be simplified.
Mhm.
I sort of understand what you're saying, but we've still got the 2.65 somehow.
Now, when? Is the question.
Well, on the 3rd of July, because they,
Voted on a Friday.
those who have the
weekend ago.
gold make the rules. It's probably one of my oldest rules. I'm going to take your question as answered and move to you to the last one, please, which has been explained that this is a replacement, it's a position that was in the budget.
Okay.
Are you happy? Because I'm,
Well, the other one, it's a question that I asked which hasn't been answered.
it's not a new position.
Why do we need another full-time employee?
Amount
And
of-
it said we advertised for a senior position.
Mm.
That left, but that was filled by existing member. Now we're applying for someone underneath. Now I would like to know why we need one. Now I know there's comments been made by a couple of directors and that about Escosa and about a particular council and the trouble they had. And talking to those people in charge, this was the only thing that they passed with flying colours, because it's
Who
been
passed
a
what?
legislative system for many, many years.
So the amount of regulation in this
Well, no,
particular,
Why do we need another person now? What has changed so dramatically?
That's who you mean.
I think we're allowed to ask that.
No, you are, but.
There is no new position. This position was in the budget process for 23-24, so over 18 months ago now. That position was filled, as you rightly said. The person in that position left. A new person, we then filled it from an internal candidate who was successful. That still leaves the position that they were in vacant, which we intend to fill.
Yeah, but why does that new position need it?
Sorry, councillor,
Not
there
a
is
new
no new
position.
position.
It was a new position last year.
One shift to the one that left, one's.
One was there. A new position was created. That was filled, he left. This fellow went up to here and now we've got another one coming in here.
Am I right?
Okay.
It's not actually new, it's just.
My,
It's funny, it says here the position has been vacant and has recently been filled by an internal staff member. Council has now gone to market to fill the vacant water and waste management operator position. That's the one underneath. So
yeah, correct.
that's not a new position though.
No. Councillor, what I would say is in this area of community waste water schemes, the amount of regulation required is just been growing exponentially. And if I was to be critical of my friends in the Local Government Association, we really haven't tackled it properly. It has been left the project in the hands of the Mid-North grouping, and it's still a bit in flux how that's going to play out.
Mr. Mayor, some 6 or 7 years ago, we spent a considerable amount of money going through our CWS system. None of it was done by our staff. It was all done by contractors.
So you could
And that
argue,
was from cameras down all the lines, holes that you couldn't, manholes that you couldn't open. And a lot of that was all, it was done. It was a major investigation, if Councillor Bean can remember, of all the CWS systems within our area.
and out of that, we've come with a pretty significant program. And I think this year's a pretty significant program, if I remember, around a pit renewal.
Yes, in 3 years.
So I suppose it's an asset we can't see much of, and therefore sometimes we need to understand a lot more.
Spent cameras and.
Yeah, that's right.
And cleaned out, yeah.
So the point we're trying to get to is that there's not an additional position being created. All right, I'm going to move on. Councillor, got one more from you, Councillor Arthur, sorry.
No, that's.
The lad to everyone. Right.
That's just, many people ask me,
Yeah,
why would we be spending that much money?
So I have a question on that question.
Yes.
So thank you. I'm looking for further clarification on what we actually agreed to specifically for the 180,000 within the 24-25 annual business plan for a new depot in Carnarvon. Is that coming out of the 352,000 allocated to the buildings budget? And then what is the one other 172,000 going to be used for? I feel a bit confused.
Are you right? It is it's pretty certain it's out of it, so it's not an extra. This is just specifically for that. There was a briefing to council probably as part of the budget process. I'm thinking just after Christmas around what that entailed. And as you can see, a good proportion of it belongs to water and electrical and connections and that sort of thing.
Front doors.
Of the front doors, but
Intanara Hall toilet upgrade, I think is the
So
other
in-
main one in
So
that.
20,000 structures. I know what the 15,000, 13,000 is for the jetties, the 20,000 structures, just remind me what that's for.
Tintinara toilets,
That's the toilets and so we've got 180 of that's been allocated towards this Canalpin depot.
depot toilets,
And then 172 out of the 352 is for,
Kitchen and hall.
There's always a portion for bits and pieces. We're always doing bits.
do you want us to circulate the list out of session?
yes, if you, and I'd like to have another look at that again because I sort of felt it was quite a lot of money.
There's nothing new in there that we haven't brought to council or that's not in the ABP. This is what's specifically just around the canal.
The ABP just has a number, it
Yeah.
doesn't specify what is, and I know we had that briefing, but it's honestly, it's so hard to go back and find that detail.
We'll circulate that, councillor.
Take a look at that session.
Okay, that'd be great.
I've now moving to councillor Peach's question, which I trust has somewhat been ameliorated by an earlier workshop today.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It has. I have a motion to move off the back of that question, which I've forwarded through earlier, following the workshop today. Thank you. So if I may, Mr Mayor, the motion I'd like to move off the back of that question is the council asks administration to come back with a solution that enables an operator to move their own vehicle behind their grader with a focus on increasing efficiency and to explore the option of one standalone roller and the financial implications of that versus proceeding with the existing rollers.
If there is a solution that enables it.
There's not a solution, we just say so, there's no solution.
Okay.
There's nothing that's adverse, Josh, to the direction you're taking, I don't believe, is there?
Through the chair. No, that encompasses part of the work that I'll be moving towards.
So, okay, I'll accept that motion, councillor, but I need a seconder. Councillor Qualman's the second. You want to speak to it, councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just appreciated the workshop earlier today and the discussion around where we're at with graders, rollers and vehicles. As I noted in my question, a community member raised this with me again, and it seems to have been something that we've gone backwards and forwards on over the years. I think we do need to come up with a solution. Now, A-frames may not be the answer, but I think there are other options that will still allow us to achieve a much more efficient outcome, whether that's a trailer or a capture wheel device or something similar. So I'd really like to see some forward movement on this, and that's why I'm putting it up.
Do any particular timeframes where we're up debating? I probably think you shouldn't actually, because the options might be as easy to find as you think.
Allocated vehicle. Me.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that'll be fine.
Sorry, and Councillor Blaine's just raised, when I say their own vehicle, I'm referring to their council vehicle that they use for work. Yeah.
It's better.
So, yes, so their council vehicle would be fine there instead of own.
Many, many years ago, the employees did provide their own vehicle with their own A-frame.
Thank you.
Flipped over my A-frame this morning. Councillor Qualman, you wish to add to the motion?
I'm happy with that. Good idea to add that amendment to it or alteration, and I totally agree with councillor Peach that we should explore all avenues because it would improve efficiency on the grading operation. So let's give it a try.
Thank you. Anyone else in the debate? There's being none, you'll close.
Close, thank you, Mr.
The motion is, this is on the screen, councillors. This is the top one. That one there, around graders. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. That's yours, councillor, isn't it? Yes, councillor Roundtree, there's an explanatory text there. That, all right?
Item 7 or question 7, when I asked what was the cost of staff time, I was just given, provided the hours. So I've been now made a bit of an assumption myself that could be about $5,000 worth of time.
To you, Mayor, it's probably like your other question, councillor Roundtree. We don't collect that information to the degree that you're thinking we might. And whether it's 5,000 or not, I couldn't say.
I guess I asked because there's been at least one other time that I can recall where I asked for a costing of something and staff time was included, and it was like it made the number bigger. Say, well, look, what you're asking for is big and it's going to cost it could cost the council money. Yet in this situation, when I've asked to see an idea of that number, I've just been given hours. So I've done my own extrapolation of time, and with the original costs and what staff have put into this, it could be around $13,600 all up. And I think we miss opportunities with NAIDOC Week to have a more meaningful engagement and interaction with school children, because that much money I could design something way more interactive. Now, I went to 2 of them. I went to Coomeradook and I went to Tintinara, and the cost of what I think is listed here as 1,100 for cultural and art workshops. I was there during those workshops and what we actually did. I struggle to see how that much money was spent on what was provided. And I think there are opportunities to engage these children in different kinds of activities, and rather than just roll on to the next year and do the same thing again, I would really love to see, and I'm happy to be involved, that we look at revamping what we offer and what we do to make that a more meaningful engagement, because I think we're missing out here. And it's having now attended 5 years of these, it is the same staff that we do over and over again. And I think it's sort of a bit boring now. The kids have done it and they're not engaged in it, and we're wasting money. If this is meant to build bridges and educate kids, we're missing out. We're just not getting that done.
Councillor, I'm just going to suggest that we perhaps need to have a workshop on this
Well, I think
process in the near future.
Well, a workshop, yes, but also I'd like to see everyone that's been to these events actually have some input into this and go, because I think we're missing out. I think we could do a lot more. And I think there's also consideration here. If you consider that the number of migrants that live in our region is actually more, it's a greater number according to ABS. It's higher than the that number. This is an opportunity to maybe look at whether we could do something for migrants as well with council to make them feel included in our community, because I know there's some disconnect there as well.
That's who you mean. There are many councils who have events for both. So I'm aware of a Greek festival, if there's a large Greek population. So depending on the profile of council will allocate a budget to various events depending on the cultural makeup of their town.
The councillor, perhaps we should program a workshop around, I suppose, how we engage with cultural groups, perhaps as.
Can I move that we have a workshop there? We have a motion that we have a workshop?
I don't think we need a motion, councillor, to be quite honest. I just think we take your point. I think we need to just do it though.
Well, I know, I
mean-
feel like I'm putting my neck on the line here, and this is, it's often
Well,
people feel uncomfortable having this conversation, but I would
Yeah,
just like to see our money be
I-
put to something that has proper engagement
No,
with our
I
community.
don't actually know you can move to have a workshop. That's what I'm just thinking about. Troubles.
Maybe explore options for council to provide options for councillors. For other cultural activities.
I'm going to recommend, councillor, you actually put up a notice of motion on this, because we just,
Sorry?
I am tired. I'm trying to get the right words in. I don't think we'll get them quick enough here. Around a notice of process around.
Would you like me to formally put in a motion for the next meeting then?
Yeah, because we just need to get the right words around. What you've mentioned is also other cultural groups. I'm just trying to work out how we do get each of them included in a motion right now. Councillor Bland.
Look, I would support us having a good look at this again and the format, because the other thing I've noticed. certainly in my own area, has dropped off. The school children are there, the staff are there, I'm there.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing the community there, and this should have been more when we were perhaps not at the school, which I don't want to take it away from the school. So I don't know how to do it better, but I think we need to have a good look this time.
But that's my point about not only with Indigenous cultural days or weeks, but also other cultural ones.
Well, how we do it.
How we do it
All inclusive.
in our broadscape, our very broad community is I'm trying to help us get the right result, councillor, but I'm not sure how to get there right now.
Is just so further then, is there a strict format that NAIDOC Week has to follow, or is there something we can even look at?
So generally, and it goes back to Councillor Blaine's point, that most of the work that we do is with the schools, probably not the community so much. The schools are where, particularly Meningie, where the schools are probably the most interested and active participants across the district. And so we tend to follow that format as well with the schools across the district rather than the broader community.
I think that's been a shift though. Previously it did include broader community. And I think as it's moved to the shift, and how do you get that back to both? I don't know, but I have seen the shift over my time where schools always were partially involved, the community partially involved, not to any best degree. And it's probably losing a little bit of impact by not bringing everybody together inclusive. How do we do that? I'm not sure.
So Mayor, if it's okay with you and Councillor Roundtree, we'll put some words together that we think will reflect your motion and we'll send it back, and then we can do a bit of backwards and forwards and wordsmithing. Would that work?
That sounds good. I'll accept that.
Okay, we'll take that. At least we're going to deal with that. I am now up to
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have a further question on that one.
on that one. Yep.
Yes, and happy for this to be taken on notice. I did note with interest reading the response to this that it would appear that in the last 3 years, council has become aware of a NARCAT descendant. So I'm quite keen to actually find out a bit more information about that, because long-standard accepted, what the word is there, law locally was that the NARCAT were an extinct people group. So if that's no longer the case, that would be interesting to find out about.
Only a couple of years ago, they found a couple.
Oh, did they?
Hmm.
Oh, good.
We will take it on notice, but
Who they are, I don't know.
Okay. I'm moving on to questions without notice. Questions without notice, councillors? Right, there is none. Motion with notice. Councillor Peach, you moving motion there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moved.
So moved. The motion is that council explore alternative options to those outlined in council's high-risk intersection report to improve safety at the junction of Hynan Road and Colquitt Road with intersect with the Mallee Highway. That's at Sherlock. Focused on low-cost safety measures that can be installed in a short time frame. And these options and costs be provided in a report to the October ordinary meeting of council. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree, you're the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It occurred to me while driving over the intersection on the way back from a meeting the other day that the roads that actually impact safety up that way are ours. Now, I know the previous costing was quite high and was focused more around a complete upgrade of the intersection. But in discussions with the CEO, one of the things that immediately came to mind to me was the installation of rumble strips on the approach to the intersection. I've had a near miss there where the first time I drove that road, I drove straight across the highway without realising it was an intersection. And I know in conversation with a number of other people down our way that that's a common experience from newbies to the district the first time they drive that road. There is a sign there that's often covered by a tree branch, and it's not clear on approach that that intersection is in fact an intersection with an arterial road. So I think there's something we could do in the short term to ensure that there aren't any incidents there. And I'm hoping it's in the thousands or much lower than a complete revamp of the intersection. So look forward to seeing what sort of response we get to that request.
Councillor Roundtree, you want to add anything? Is the second up?
Yeah, only reiterating that I actually take that road quite frequently. When I drive to council, I'll go up Jones Road down Tynan, get to the Mallee Highway, and if you are not concentrating, you will drive straight across the Mallee Highway without realising you've come to the end of your road. So it is a really dangerous intersection, and I'd hate for it to be, 3 deaths until we get something done. So if there is anything that we can do, I would 100% support that.
Councillors, this is the costs you saw, councillor, before were around heavy vehicle junction there. It's no doubt it is dangerous, but this morning, and it's complicated by the railway line, not closed. I think we are moving closer, councillors, to no longer pretending that the railway line may be open one day, as in the signage on it. You'll notice along more so the line to Loxton, councillor, that most of the railway safety signs and or they call them active things, I call them ding-dongers, have been souvenired, I should say.
Yes.
So how we make that junction a bit clearer has always been a challenge for us. If we were to, I would reflect on an accident that happened many years ago on the Karoonda Highway up at Ettrick on Christmas, New Year, and killed 2 people. And if you look at that junction, that was realigned fully. Because of that. But that was done under black spots funding at the time. There was 2 deaths in that accident. So we can look at whatever more we can do to try and alert people as they come across it. But I drove it again this morning accidentally, not accidentally. And it is very easy to miss it.
Down at Kaipo, down at Meadows, they've got a very notorious intersection down there, and it goes onto the road that goes into Meadows, or you can go to Wollonga Hill, and there's a lot of deaths there. There's a lot of markers. They put flashing lights and all sorts of stuff up there to warn people of that intersection, because it is shocking.
Yeah, it does say low cost in this here. Yeah, there's actually a rural advanced warning, something or other. There's a big words for it.
We'll have a look if there's any alternatives.
But there's this sort of alternatives within our ambit of things that I might reflect back on my report around the Mallee Highway road junctions, that the upgrade of the safety package for the highway never picked this up, even though we alerted them. That was why we wanted the junction improved, unfortunately. Anyone else? Councillor Coleman?
Just to comment that, yeah, I've noted, I've made a little diagram here, and it's interesting because it actually approaches into the 80K zone, which is probably a good thing, into Sherlock. I was just wondering, on the 3rd of September, we've got a roads and infrastructure meeting at Peak. So I'd just probably maybe encourage members to have a bit of a look on the way through.
That's right, we are at Peak.
3rd of September.
Yep. Yeah, certainly. Okay, anyone else? There is not. You'll close, councillor Peach.
Close, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is as it reads. All those in favour? Against, that's carried unanimously. Councillor Roundtree, number 2, motions with notice.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory, and the comment from the CEO, I accept that it could be looked at the same time as looking at the Narong campgrounds is.
There a seconder? Councillor Coleman. Self-explanatory, councillors, you want any more? Any debate at all?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to also include the Narong caravan, no parking grounds
In there.
It's in
And
there.
then-
into that motion with the proposers. Okay. The investigation of Wave terminals. That would probably be different over there. That would be a terminal where you'd get a printout ticket to put on your dash, same as they do over on York Peninsula.
Do it online.
In the
Because
chief-
not powered
yeah,
sites, you
the
see.
Chief Executive Officer's comment is in the workshop. We would just be discussing that option as well.
a lot of money to sort out that property, you'd go with online or one. Now we have good signal there.
That's how you go the Coorong now. You pay before you go.
So I think the motion still stands on its own volition, noting the comments of the CEO.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? There's been, you'll close
Close.
with the motion. All those in favour? As against, that's carried unanimously. 13.2, motions without notice, councillors. There is none. Number 14, minute action lists, questions, councillors, please. Councillor Peach.
I have a couple of questions, Mr Mayor. The letter to Country Health Connect, would I be correct in hearing just before that hasn't been sent yet?
Not yet. We have it for circulation to the councillors.
That's
We have it for circulation
So
to
you
the
can-
councillors. It will come out tomorrow for
any
you.
moment, so you can have a look at it.
Right.
Before it goes. I've just only seen it by the meeting.
All right. And my other question I had regarding the minute to action list to my motion from May regarding roadside fallen timber collection and a completed target completion date of October. Why is it taking 5 months to bring that back to council when another council already has a policy that I've asked to be mirrored as close as possible? I'm just a bit curious as to why this is being delayed so far down the
you-
line.
Yeah, one would be a resourcing issue in that area, just generally. The people who look after the policy are also looking after the annual report at the moment. But the second one is, and I'm aware that, and Josh helped, but we have been trying to contact that council to get some background information. We're also talking with the insurers about the whole thing. So it has been probably not the quickest process, but not all because it's been anybody's fault. It's just been one of those ones that's probably been put on the back burner a little bit compared to other priorities at the moment. But work has been done on it.
Waiting, councillors, for anything else. That's the Roundtree.
Any update on the surplus train carriages, which is minute 25623?
Through you, Mayor, we have had some quotes back, which the Mayor is, I think, hoping he sits down on.
It's very carefully for a long time.
So we've been backwards and forwards to see are there any alternatives to what that first quote that came back, which had too many numbers in it, 6 of them in fact. That one.
Commercially in confidence, yes.
So, yes, so thank you. Thank you. So we're still working through the process.
Okay, my last one then, 14923. Why is the Salt Creek toilet block taking so long?
Because it's
Don't we have a design
no,
already?
because
We
it's a
could
debt
just-
process, councillor.
We have asked we've asked it for a copy of the floor plan. It's coming.
How long ago did you ask and how long has it been coming for?
Through the chair, I've been asking on a weekly basis and I get it's coming. We'll send it through shortly. And it hasn't been forthcoming.
It would be wonderful to have it before summer with tourists on the road.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Salt Creek's sake.
They're through the
Issues.
chair, so that they've gone through an expressions of interest through their internal panel because of the size of the contract in total. They're still expecting to have it completed before Christmas. So that's their goal. And we're just pushing them for a design so that we can present that back to council.
Okay.
Thank you, Conrad.
You did well. You did well.
What am I in minute action list? Sorry, councillors.
Mr Mayor, 123-23, meeting with community groups. That was a motion from May last year. Our completion date was October last year, and I don't believe we've actually, although we've discussed enacting the intent of the motion in the meantime, where's that at?
We have been waiting to see what the local government association are doing around community engagement in particular. We only talked about that about a week or so ago. There doesn't seem to be any movement on their part to do that. So we will now And there doesn't seem to be any indication actually, and we expected that last year. So we will now go and either draft a new policy or amend the one that we have around community engagement, because we're not anticipating that the local government will be upgrading theirs anytime soon.
Councillor, it's a particularly, I'll say, difficult one to design a policy around, I think.
Why is that though, Mayor?
Because the motion, at what point a council officer is meeting a person, would we be involved? At what point would that be?
I don't think it's that complicated, Mr Mayor. It says community groups.
Yeah.
If that person is there on behalf of a community group, then we're involved. If they're not there on behalf of a community group, we're not involved.
I think it's actually quite simple. I don't see why this is so complicated.
Sent me an email, but I had missed it, missed the meeting to actually attend. Had I actually received it when the staff member was intending to go to the council, I would have certainly been available to it. So that's just most unfortunate. But I actually had received one, but I had viewed my email from that person a little bit late.
So you, Mayor, was that an individual or community group councillor?
He represented the community.
Yeah, the governance officer just reminded me that sometimes it is a matter of timing, that sometimes these things do have a very short life.
But not probably that.
And if you consider the work that Tammy does, you will all be at a meeting with Tammy every day of the week.
We're not saying we want to attend them all. We're just saying we want to know about them in case it is important that we attend. We don't necessarily want to go to every one of these meetings. It's just when there are community meetings with groups that we're involved in. See, I guess it goes this way. They believe that we're not coming and we're snubbing them. And in reality is we don't know about it. So they assume that when they contact the council about things that somehow we magically know what's going on, and are surprised to find out actually we don't get told about a lot of stuff like that, and we don't know, and that's why we weren't at the meeting. And so we're in a position of having to say, so sorry, would have come, supported you had we known, but we just didn't know. And so I guess that's, I mean, I think we could write a policy quite easily. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
So councillors, this gets to actually a core issue of governance, and I'm telling you, my brain's not working anymore tonight. That's why there's been some discussions internally. It's struggles, particularly with no wards.
Mr Mayor, I would say that councillors move the motion, we pass it unanimously.
No.
It needs to be dealt with in accordance with how the chamber voted. Therefore, it is a key matter. And it's been on the action list. It's been raised before that it hasn't been done. And I'm sorry, it needs to be dealt with.
Right. Noted. Anything else out of the minute action list? There is nothing. Or I will move. Confidential items. There is a recommendation, councillors, that we move into confidence. Could someone move that way, please? Councillors Qualman and Bland. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously.